Okay, welcome to the walkthrough for display ad intro. So for this, I'm just going to walk you through the different options for creating a display campaign and some of the different steps that you need to set up when going through and creating a new display campaign. So let's get started. If you click on the Create New Campaign tab and select the drop down for Display Network Only, click that option and it will pop up a new screen. It's going to look similar to the ad group that we talked about when creating a search ad, but we're going to name this test campaign. And then what you can do is you can select some of the similar targeting options that you saw in those search advertisements. You can select what devices you want, what operating systems, what carriers and Wi-Fi. Again, that's not too important at this stage of creating a display ad, but we can look at that later once the ad's been created and optimize based on which devices are performing better. But what you are going to want to do is understand what language and what locations you want your ads to serve. We talked about that in a previous lesson, actually a couple of lessons, and talking about how to select your targeting options based on where you ship or where your physical locations are, or if you only want to target within a given radius, you can do that as well. And then you need to set your bidding and budgeting options. For this, I'm just going to do $5 per day, and actually I'm going to let Google Adwords set my clicks to make it a little bit easier. And then for your ad extensions, you can only include call and location extensions for the display campaign. And then some of the other options are the scheduling, if you want to start it or end it on a certain day, or if you want to choose the ad delivery. The different types of ad delivery are ad rotation, so you can optimize for clicks, you can optimize for conversions, and rotate evenly. As you can see, there's a lot of the same options as the search ads. It's just displayed a little bit differently. Some of the information lives in the different drop-down fields. But one thing I would highly recommend you do is frequency cap your display ads. So what frequency capping is, and if you want to read more about it, you can always hover over the question mark in Google AdWords. But what frequency capping is it saying, hey, this is how many times I want to show a certain advertisement to a certain user per day. So you can also set it per week or per month, but I usually like to set it at around 5 to 6 per day per ad group or per campaign, because you don't want to bombard a user with the same advertisements over and over and over if it's not performing. Sometimes it does take a few for them to notice. You can go up to as high as 10, 12, but usually best practice are to keep it in that 5 to 10 range to cap your frequency on your display campaigns. And then your social settings, lastly, to include a +1 button. If you don't have your Google Plus account set up, obviously you're not going to do this. And if you do have one set up, again, not a huge amount of benefits to having it, but I usually test without, usually opt for without the +1 button annotations, because I just don't see the returns of using that. So once we click that, save and continue, you can create your ad group. So I'm going to call this test group 1, and you can select how you want to target your ads, either through display keywords, so show ads on sites related to your keywords. That's like what we talked about in the intro section, contextual targeting. So showing your advertisements based on keywords that you say are related to your product. It will only show up on those websites. You can choose to target your ad based on interest or remarketing. So if you already have a remarketing list, we're actually going to have a whole section dedicated to that and a whole lesson. But you can select interest categories. So let's say for auto and vehicles, you want to, that's the audience that you want to select. Or maybe you want to go to computers and electronics. You can click that drop down, and you can even go even further into that. So in computers and electronics, I'm going to go into software, and then internet software and content management. So I sell a content management tool. As you can see, it goes pretty deep into the interests, and you can choose very closely about around the category of your product, and then you can actually add custom combinations. But interest categories are good. Contextual targeting is usually the way you're going to want to go for an initial campaign. Remarketing is really great as well, but that's a whole nother lesson. And then you can use a different targeting method. They provide a drop down for topics or placements. Placements are showing ads on an individual website, so you can, if you know a website is involved in the Google display network, you can choose to place your ads there. Or if you want to just do a search based on your industry or your category, you can pull up some websites when you're doing your research and say, oh, I know that website. I know that a lot of our customers are on that website, or maybe not so much that one. And you can pick and choose what placements you want to show up on. And then there's age and gender. Those are pretty self-explanatory. And so for this, I'm going to just use flavored coffee and click Save and Continue. Now, this screen is going to look completely different than search advertisements, but it's going to allow you to create your ad group. So we're not going to use text ads for this example. We're going to do an image ad. So I'm going to upload an ad. I already have a few created from a couple of campaigns that I have run in the past. They're in my downloads folder, and here we go. So I have a 250 by 250. And all you have to do is it'll give an image preview, and sometimes it will tell you that it doesn't meet the parameters of the size or the file size or the actual size of the image. But for this, I'm just going to call it number 1, and then the display URL, www.mom.com, and then that's the destination URL. Again, you understand how to display your URLs and how to send them to different destinations, so that's self-explanatory. And then you can, if you want to create your next ad, you can add a different file size or a different image size. You can create as many as you need to, but once you're done, you just save and continue, and then it will go through an approval process within Google to make sure that your ads meet their guidelines. There's no adult images. Everything is kosher on their end, and everything meets everything that they told you to do. And then you'll start to see impressions building in your Google AdWords account and under the reports, and you'll see that they start to run. So that's basically how you set up a display campaign. You can go through the different options and find the options that work for you. And if you are going to do a display campaign, I would suggest that you go through and test every possible option for targeting. Also test a bunch of different creative. So create at least 2 or 3 ad groups within your display campaign to see what works and how to find that sweet spot. And another last note to mention is the click-through rate is going to be substantially lower for your display campaign. For most campaigns, it's usually is under 1%. A 1% click-through rate is generally very good. It depends on industry, but you're not going to get those 5, 7, 10% click-through rates that you are on the search advertisements, just because people have gotten better at tuning some of the display advertisements out. Again, if they're very targeted and the creative is very good, you have a better chance of getting a click-through. But just know that your click-through rate is going to be lower for the display campaign and for your display ad groups. So that wraps up the walkthrough for display ads.